The pencil trembled in General Oberst Alfred Jodel's grip. May 28, 1945. Mondorf-les-Bains, Luxembourg. The interrogation room felt smaller with each passing second. Across the metal table sat an American intelligence officer. His words cut through the air like shards of ice. The officer's voice was steady, matter of fact, almost casual. "You're telling me that Patton's entire army group never existed?" Color drained from Jodel's weathered face. His military bearing cracked. The foundation of everything he believed began crumbling beneath him. The pencil clattered onto the table. His hands shook uncontrollably. That slight nod from the American would shatter history. It would expose the most devastating psychological collapse any military force had ever endured. For 2 long years, the Wehrmacht's finest commanders had been chasing ghosts. They had positioned hundreds of thousands of troops against threats that existed only in their minds. They had moved entire divisions to counter enemies made of rubber and canvas. They had maintained defensive positions against forces that lived only in carefully crafted reports. The mathematical reality emerging in that sterile room was beyond devastating. Fewer than 3,000 Allied specialists had neutralized nearly 500,000 German soldiers. They had done it without firing a single shot, without dropping a single bomb, without spilling a drop of blood. What Jodl couldn't grasp yet was the true scope of his defeat. No German commander would fully understand it for decades. They had been conquered not by superior numbers, not by advanced technology, not by overwhelming firepower. They had been destroyed by the most elaborate military deception in human history. An operation so audacious it defied belief. Inflatable tanks weighing just 93 pounds had masqueraded as 32-ton Shermans. Hollywood artists had created entire fictional divisions from thin air. Double agents so trusted by German intelligence that Hitler himself had decorated them. The Iron Cross for warning about invasions that would never come. The story would unfold through years of post-war interrogations, through mountains of declassified documents, through veteran testimonies that read like fiction. It would reveal a truth more devastating than any battlefield defeat. The German High Command had spent the crucial months of 1944 defending against illusions. December 6, 1943, marked the birth of history's greatest lie. The Allied combined chiefs of staff gathered in austere conference rooms. Maps covered every surface. The weight of millions of lives pressed down on every decision. They approved Operation Bodyguard, a comprehensive deception plan designed to mislead German forces about the invasion of Northwest Europe. The scope was unprecedented in warfare. Multiple fictional military formations would spring to life across Britain. Fake invasion preparations would spread from Norway to the Mediterranean. The largest double-agent operation ever attempted would begin feeding carefully crafted lies to German intelligence. Beneath Whitehall's ancient stone corridors lay the nerve center. The London controlling section operated from offices that never saw daylight. Colonel John Bevan commanded this shadow organization. Established in 1942, his small team of intelligence officers would orchestrate a symphony of deception so complex that historians still struggle to separate truth from fiction decades later. Their weapon wasn't steel or explosive. It was information itself, carefully crafted, meticulously distributed, devastating in its impact. Each lie built upon the last. Each deception reinforced the others. The web grew stronger with every thread. The mathematical challenge was stark and unforgiving. January 1944 found German forces in Western Europe comprising 58 divisions, approximately 850,000 combat troops stretched across a 3,000-mile Atlantic wall. The Allies needed to disperse these forces rather than allowing them to concentrate at the actual invasion site. Every German division kept away from Normandy on D-Day could save thousands of Allied lives. The arithmetic was brutal but simple. Concentration meant catastrophe. Dispersion meant survival. But Operation Bodyguard's true genius lay deeper than grand strategy. It resided in psychological sophistication that bordered on the supernatural. British intelligence had spent 3 years dissecting German military doctrine. They had studied command structures with microscopic precision. Most importantly, they had analyzed the personal psychology of Adolf Hitler himself. They knew his obsessions. His fixation on the Pas de Calais region consumed his strategic thinking. His conviction that any rational enemy would choose the shortest crossing point had become unshakable doctrine. They understood his mental patterns, his tendency to see confirmations of his preconceptions, his trust in intelligence that supported his existing assumptions. This psychological profile would shape every aspect of the deception. Every fabricated report would feed Hitler's biases. Every false clue would reinforce his expectations. The Führer's own mind would become the Allies' greatest weapon against him. As Thaddeus Holt would later observe in The Deceivers, this represented the first time in military history that an entire campaign was built around defeating the enemy's mind rather than the enemy's forces. The battlefield would be consciousness itself. January 20th, 1944. Camp Forest, Tennessee. Something unprecedented in military annals began taking shape under the harsh fluorescent lights of training barracks. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops assembled for instruction, unlike anything previously attempted by any military force in history. These weren't ordinary soldiers marching in formation. They were a carefully selected collection of artists, engineers, and creative professionals. Recruited from America's most prestigious art schools and innovative advertising agencies, men whose talents the military had never before considered essential to warfare. The 603rd Camouflage Engineers formed the visual deception component. Personnel drawn from institutions including Pratt Institute, Cooper Union, and the Philadelphia Museum School of Industrial Art filled their ranks. Among them stood 22-year-old Bill Blass, who would later revolutionize fashion design. Ellsworth Kelly worked alongside him, future pioneer of minimalist art whose canvases would hang in museums worldwide. These men brought skills that traditional military training couldn't provide: the ability to create convincing illusions on a massive scale, to understand how light and shadow could deceive the human eye, to manipulate perspective and proportion until fiction became indistinguishable from reality. At the U.S. Rubber Company's Akron Mill facility in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, revolutionary manufacturing was underway. Workers, many of them teenage girls earning 49 cents per hour, assembled pneumatic tanks, trucks, and artillery pieces from rubberized canvas and neoprene. Their nimble fingers worked with precision that would determine the fate of nations. Each inflatable Sherman tank weighed just 93 pounds when deflated. Folded, it could fit into a standard military foot locker. But when inflated with gasoline-powered compressors, it became operational in just 20 minutes. From a distance of 400 yards, the typical range for German aerial reconnaissance, these rubber constructs were completely indistinguishable from actual armored vehicles weighing 32 tons. The technical specifications were remarkable in their attention to detail. The inflatable equipment featured authentic unit markings meticulously painted by hand. Unit insignia appeared weathered and worn. Even simulated battle damage was added to suggest combat experience. Wear patterns on track guards matched those found on real tanks after months of service. The Ghost Army developed techniques for creating realistic evidence of armored presence. Using bulldozers equipped with special track attachments, They could reproduce the distinctive marks left by different vehicle types. Sherman tanks left tracks 18.75 inches wide, with characteristic rubber block patterns. Stuart light tanks created narrower impressions with different tread designs. They learned to position vehicles at slightly irregular angles. Real military units never parked in perfect formations. Natural disorder had to be simulated with careful precision. Most ingeniously, they deliberately included imperfect camouflage. Enemy reconnaissance needed to discover hidden positions that seemed carelessly concealed. Lieutenant Colonel Clifford Simpson commanded the 603rd Engineers with theatrical flair that matched their mission. Training pushed his men to extremes that would have seemed absurd in conventional units. Soldiers learned to create entire military installations overnight. Complete motor pools appearing where empty fields had existed hours before. Supply depots materializing with realistic wear patterns and authentic disorder. They studied the daily rhythms of real military units with anthropological precision. When would laundry be hung on improvised lines? When would vehicles move for routine maintenance? When would smoke rise from field kitchens preparing morning meals? These details separated convincing deception from obvious fakery. While visual deception captured enemy eyes, the 3132nd Signal Service Company attacked enemy ears with technology that seemed like science fiction. Working with Bell Telephone Laboratories in Murray Hill, New Jersey, they developed acoustic warfare capabilities that pushed the boundaries of what was thought possible. The unit's primary weapons were 500-pound speakers mounted on modified M10 tank destroyers. These weren't simple public address systems amplified to military specifications. They were sophisticated acoustic projection systems capable of throwing sound up to 15 miles with pinpoint accuracy. Bell Labs engineers created detailed atmospheric effect tables that read like meteorological textbooks. Temperature affected sound propagation. Humidity changed how far voices could travel. Wind speed altered the direction of acoustic projection. Terrain features created echoes and dead zones that had to be calculated with mathematical precision. A recording of tanks moving through mud at 40 degrees Fahrenheit required completely different amplification settings than the same recording played at 70 degrees. Air density changed with altitude. Barometric pressure influenced how sound waves traveled through the atmosphere. The sound effects library they assembled was extraordinary in its comprehensiveness. Engineers at Fort Knox drove tanks at various speeds over every conceivable surface. Concrete produced sharp metallic clanking. Gravel created distinctive crushing sounds. Mud generated wet sucking noises. Grass muffled engine noise while allowing track sounds to carry. They captured the unique acoustic signatures of different tank models. Stuart light tanks produced a high-pitched whine from their Continental engines. Shermans rumbled with deeper, more powerful notes from their radial aircraft engines. The characteristic squeal of tank tracks needing maintenance became a crucial audio detail. Bridge construction required its own acoustic catalog. Pile drivers created rhythmic metallic pounding that carried for miles. Welding torches produced distinctive crackling and hissing. Officers shouted commands in patterns that matched real engineering operations. The splash of pontoons hitting water had to sound authentic to trained German listeners. Staff Sergeant John Shillstone brought professional sound engineering experience from civilian radio work. He developed mixing techniques that created three-dimensional soundscapes impossible to achieve with simple recordings. By using multiple speakers positioned at calculated distances, they could simulate the approach of an armored column complete with Doppler effects as vehicles passed hypothetical listening posts. German acoustic reconnaissance units, trained to identify Allied equipment by sound signatures alone, reported hearing massive armored formations that existed only as carefully orchestrated recordings playing from hidden speakers in empty fields. The psychological sophistication extended to minute details that revealed deep understanding of human nature. They recorded soldiers complaining about food quality in authentic American accents. Sergeants threatened punishment for minor infractions with genuine military authority. Vehicles that wouldn't start on cold mornings created morning delays that matched real unit experiences. These ambient sounds, mixed with primary tank and truck engine effects, created audio portraits so convincing that local French civilians would later swear under oath they had seen the tanks they had only heard rumbling past their villages in darkness. Radio simulation required technical precision that bordered on the supernatural. The Signal Company Special faced a challenge that seemed impossible. Every military radio operator developed distinctive transmission patterns. Their fist was as unique as fingerprints. German signals intelligence, among the world's most sophisticated, cataloged these patterns to track unit movements across continents. The Ghost Army had to replicate not just message traffic volume and timing. They had to duplicate the individual quirks of hundreds of radio operators they had never met. Using SCR 399 radio sets, the 296 signal specialists maintained the electronic signature of entire divisions that existed only on paper. They employed IBM tabulating machines programmed to generate random 5-letter code groups. These meaningless character combinations mimicked genuine encrypted traffic when transmitted at proper intervals with authentic procedure calls. Private First Class Lester Friedman spent weeks studying recordings of specific radio operators from real units. He learned to duplicate their unique transmission rhythms. Fast operators who sent Morse code at 25 words per minute. Slow operators who struggled to maintain 15 words per minute. The hesitation patterns that revealed nervousness. The confident flourishes that showed experience. Radio deception operated on strict schedules that matched observed Allied communication patterns with clockwork precision. Morning reports transmitted at 600 hours exactly. Supply requests followed at 1,000 hours. Evening situation reports arrived punctually at 1,800 hours. Any deviation from these patterns would alert German intercept operators to potential deception. They simulated radio discipline failures that occurred in real units under stress. Operators who forgot to encode routine messages during supply emergencies. Brief transmissions in clear language when equipment malfunctioned. The characteristic increase in traffic volume that preceded major military operations. German intercept stations monitored from powerful facilities scattered across occupied France and Belgium. Radio operators working in shifts around the clock faithfully logged every transmission. They built detailed pictures of Allied formations that didn't exist anywhere except in carefully constructed lies floating through the electromagnetic spectrum. While the Ghost Army perfected its tools of mass deception, the broader Operation Fortitude was taking shape across the British Isles. The operation split into two major components designed to stretch German defensive attention across impossible distances. Fortitude North suggested an invasion of Norway from Scottish ports. Fortitude South indicated an assault on the Pas de Calais from southeastern England. Each component required its own elaborate infrastructure of coordinated lies. Colonel David Strangeways received responsibility for tactical deception under 21st Army Group. A brilliant intelligence officer who had served with Montgomery in North Africa, Strangeways possessed the creative ruthlessness necessary for such unprecedented psychological warfare. February 23, 1944 marked a crucial turning point. Strangeways completely rewrote the Fortitude South plan after recognizing that physical deception alone couldn't achieve the necessary scale of German misdirection. Instead, He created a framework that relied primarily on double agents and radio traffic. Visual deception would serve as confirmation rather than primary evidence. The centerpiece of this revised strategy was the 1st United States Army Group, FUSAG. Command fell to General George S. Patton, a choice calculated for maximum German attention and credibility. Patton, whom German intelligence considered America's most competent combat commander, had been conspicuously absent from public view since the infamous slapping incidents in Sicily. German intelligence desperately sought Patton's location. Their doctrine held that wherever America's best general appeared, the main Allied effort would inevitably follow. This assumption would become the foundation of their strategic miscalculation. FUSAG's fictional order of battle was magnificent in its elaborate detail. It comprised 2 complete armies. The 1st Canadian Army, which actually existed but was assigned to different operations. The 3rd U.S. Army, which existed on paper but wasn't yet operational. Under these commands were 11 divisions distributed across southeastern England. Some divisions were real, but stationed elsewhere in Britain. Others were completely fictional, existing only in reports and radio transmissions. The imaginary units included the 17th U.S. Infantry Division, complete with detailed personnel records, the 11th U.S. Armored Division, with tank strength reports and maintenance schedules, the 35th U.S. Airborne Division, featuring parachute training schedules and aircraft allocation tables. Each fictional division possessed its own meticulously crafted history. Unit commanders with military backgrounds researched from real personnel files. Insignia designed by professional artists and approved through fictional chain of command procedures. Training records that showed progression from basic formation through combat readiness. Physical infrastructure across southeastern England supported the grand illusion with impressive attention to detail. In Kent, Essex, and East Anglia, the Allies constructed what appeared to be massive invasion preparations visible from German reconnaissance aircraft flying at extreme altitudes. At Dover, 255 dummy landing craft designated Big Bobs and Wet Bobs floated in the harbor. These sophisticated constructions built from scaffolding tubes, painted canvas, and carefully welded oil drums created the silhouette of genuine invasion vessels when viewed from above. Each dummy craft required 6 to 7 3-ton trucks to transport the 500-plus individual components. A 20-man crew needed 6 hours to assemble one complete unit. The finished craft weighed 8 tons, light enough that they frequently capsized in strong channel winds, requiring constant maintenance and hurried replacement before dawn revealed their artificial nature. Unknown to German intelligence analysts studying reconnaissance photographs with magnifying glasses, by 1944, every single agent they believed they controlled in Britain was actually under complete British supervision. The double-cross system, administered by the 20 Committee, represented the most comprehensive intelligence victory in espionage history. The Committee's designation came from Roman numerals XX, hence double-cross. Their achievement was total penetration and control of German intelligence gathering in the British Isles. Not a single genuine German agent operated independently on British soil after 1942. The system's crown jewel was Juan Pujol Garcia, a Spanish citizen who had approached both British and German intelligence services in 1941. Determined to work against Nazi Germany, Pujol initially faced rejection from suspicious British intelligence officers who couldn't verify his background or motivations. Undeterred, Pujol convinced German Abwehr officers in Madrid that he could establish an extensive spy network throughout Britain. Operating from a modest hotel room in Lisbon, with nothing more than a tourist guidebook, a railway timetable, and limitless imagination, Pujol created fictional agents and sent reports to Germany. His fabricated intelligence was so convincing and detailed that British intelligence became alarmed at this unknown agent's apparent activities. Counterintelligence officers spent months trying to identify the source of information that seemed to come from someone with extraordinary access to British military secrets. April 24, 1942, marked Pujol's arrival in London via Gibraltar. Under the code name Garbo, while the Germans knew him as Arabelle, Pujol and his handler Thomas Harris began creating the most elaborate double-agent operation ever attempted by any intelligence service. From a nondescript office on Jermyn Street, they managed a completely fictional network of 27 sub-agents spread across Britain and beyond. The detail was absolutely staggering in its comprehensive scope. Each sub-agent possessed a distinct personality, personal problems, political motivations, and access limitations that determined what information they could believably obtain. Agent 3 was an Orwell enthusiast and student in Glasgow with communist sympathies that affected his reliability and reporting focus. Agent 4 was a Gibraltarian waiter working in NAFI, Navy, Army, and Air Force institutes, who gathered intelligence from careless military conversations overheard during meal service. Agent 7 was a Welsh ex-seaman in Swansea, who led a network of Welsh nationalists motivated by anti-English sentiment rather than pro-German ideology. When Agent 3 was supposedly killed during the North African campaign, Pujol needed to eliminate him permanently since his reports from Scotland were becoming increasingly difficult to maintain without raising German suspicions. Garbo reported the death to his German controllers with appropriate sadness, and even placed an authentic obituary in British newspapers that German intelligence could verify through neutral sources. German trust in Garbo reached extraordinary levels that amazed even British intelligence officers who had orchestrated his operation. In July 1943, they sent him $20,000, equivalent to $1.25 million in 2023 purchasing power, transmitted through the Japanese embassy to fund his expanding network operations. They provided him with bottles of secret ink for secure communications, detailed questionnaires about specific intelligence requirements that revealed German strategic concerns. Eventually, they awarded him the Iron Cross First Class on July 29, 1944, making him one of the very few civilians to receive this prestigious military decoration for his supposed contributions to German intelligence gathering. Visual deception evolved into an art form that extended far beyond simple inflatable equipment scattered across empty fields. Operation Quicksilver, divided into 6 separate components, created an entire fictional military infrastructure spanning southeastern England with impressive attention to authentic detail. Q lighting sites simulated the nighttime illumination patterns of major military installations. After dark, carefully controlled lights suggested blacked-out bases struggling with imperfect light discipline that allowed glimpses of activity within. Vehicle headlights moved along predetermined routes, creating the impression of continuous nighttime military traffic between installations. The 406th Combat Engineers, attached to various deception operations throughout southern England, mastered the creation of physical evidence that would convince German reconnaissance pilots flying at 30,000 feet. Using bulldozers equipped with special track pattern attachments, they recreated the distinctive marks left by different military vehicle types. Sherman tanks left tracks exactly 18.75 inches wide, with characteristic rubber block patterns that wore differently depending on terrain and vehicle weight. They could reproduce these markings perfectly in mud, sand, or grass. They learned that tanks turning in place created distinctive pivot marks in soil that experienced German photo interpreters would recognize immediately. Heavy vehicles compressed earth differently when fully loaded versus empty. Fuel trucks created different tire impressions than ammunition transports. Even small details like fluid leaks became crucial. Military vehicles leaked specific oils and hydraulic fluids that created particular stain patterns recognizable to trained intelligence analysts. Dummy fuel installations appeared along the Dover coast, constructed from carefully camouflaged sewage pipes and painted boards that from aerial reconnaissance altitude appeared identical to genuine petroleum storage facilities. Complete security fencing, realistic guard posts, and vehicle tracks suggesting regular supply deliveries added layers of authenticity. The Allies even simulated military accidents and equipment failures. A crashed supply truck positioned beside a road suggested normal operational hazards. A collapsed camouflage net over dummy equipment implied hasty concealment attempts. These imperfections added credibility through realistic human error. Dover Castle's ancient tunnels, carved into the white chalk cliffs centuries earlier, housed the nerve center for radio deception operations. Banks of transmitters operated 24 hours daily, maintaining the electronic signature of FUSAG units across southeastern England with mechanical precision. Operators worked in carefully coordinated shifts, maintaining consistent transmission patterns that German direction-finding stations could track and triangulate. They positioned transmitters at locations corresponding to fictional unit headquarters, ensuring that German radio intelligence would place invented divisions exactly where visual reconnaissance appeared to confirm their presence. German intelligence apparatus, despite its fearsome reputation for efficiency and ruthlessness, suffered from fundamental structural flaws that made it surprisingly vulnerable to coordinated Allied deception efforts. The Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence service, employed over 21,000 officials by 1941, yet internal rivalries with the Sicherheitsdienst des Reichsführers SS created institutional dysfunction that the Allies learned to exploit systematically. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, who headed the Abwehr until February 1944, was himself of questionable loyalty to the Nazi regime. His organization had been penetrated not only by Allied agents, but by internal resistance members who actively worked to undermine German intelligence capabilities from within. Colonel Hans Oster, Canaris's deputy and closest collaborator, actively worked against Nazi interests while maintaining his cover as a loyal intelligence officer. When Canaris was finally arrested following the July 20, 1944 assassination attempt on Hitler, the Abwehr was immediately absorbed into the Reichssicherheitshauptamt under Walter Schellenberg, creating further organizational chaos in German intelligence gathering just when accurate information became most critical. At Fremde Heere West, Foreign Armies West, the Wehrmacht department responsible for evaluating Allied strength and intentions, Colonel Alexis von Roene commanded a small staff tasked with an impossible mission. Roene, a devout Christian and member of the Confessing Church, personally opposed the Nazi regime while serving in one of its most sensitive intelligence positions. His intelligence estimates consistently inflated Allied strength, not from professional incompetence, but as deliberate sabotage designed to weaken German defensive preparations. When Roene received reports about FUSAG from multiple apparently independent sources, Garbo's extensive network, aerial reconnaissance photographs, and radio intercepts, he validated and amplified them rather than subjecting them to critical analysis. Roene's May 1944 estimate placed 89 Allied divisions in Britain when only 45 actually existed and were available for invasion operations. He reported the U.S. Iked Corps as combat-ready and positioned for immediate deployment when it wouldn't become operational until June 15th. These dramatically inflated reports, stamped with Fremde Heere West's institutional authority, went directly to Hitler and the German High Command without independent verification. German signals intelligence, despite sophisticated direction-finding equipment and extensively trained operators, fell victim to their own analytical assumptions and procedural limitations. They intercepted genuine communications from real Allied units that the British intentionally associated with FUSAG through carefully crafted radio deception. The British 3rd Infantry Division, for instance, was completely real and stationed in Scotland preparing for actual combat operations. But German intelligence placed it under FUSAG command, based on fabricated radio traffic that appeared to show coordination between the division and Patton's fictional headquarters. This deliberate mixing of authentic and fictional elements made the deception nearly impossible for German analysts to unravel through conventional intelligence evaluation methods. Real units provided genuine radio signatures that validated the existence of fictional formations supposedly operating alongside them. Beyond Garbo's extensive network, the double-cross system operated an entire symphony of double agents, each contributing unique elements to the grand deception orchestra. Duško Popov, codenamed Tricycle, was a Serbian playboy whose lifestyle convinced German intelligence that he moved freely in high society circles where military secrets flowed as freely as champagne at embassy receptions. His reports to the Abwehr, actually written by MI5 case officers with extensive knowledge of British social customs, included a carefully calculated mixture of true but harmless information, outdated intelligence that couldn't affect current operations, and crucial lies about Allied intentions that reinforced German strategic misconceptions. Roman Czerniawski, a Polish Air Force officer codenamed Brutus, had operated an extensive resistance network in occupied France before his capture by German security forces. Turned by the Germans, or so they believed, he escaped to Britain where he began radioing intelligence reports to his controllers in Paris. His genuine military background and extensive combat experience gave his reports special credibility when describing FUSAG preparations and Allied military capabilities. German intelligence officers trusted information from sources with proven military expertise more than reports from civilian agents. May 31, 1944, just days before D-Day, Brutus transmitted a crucial report confirming that FUSAG remained concentrated in southeastern England, awaiting final orders for the main invasion operation. This message, received and believed by German intelligence, helped maintain their focus on Pas de Calais defenses. Wolf Schmidt, codenamed Tate by British intelligence, held the remarkable distinction of being the longest-running double-cross agent in the entire operation. Parachuted into England in September 1940, he was captured within hours of landing and immediately turned into a controlled asset. For nearly 5 years, until May 2, 1945, Tate transmitted weekly intelligence reports to Hamburg. The Germans trusted him so completely, they never suspected that his reports about V-1 and V-2 rocket impact sites were deliberately falsified to cause German targeting adjustments away from central London toward less populated areas. The coordination required among all these agents was absolutely staggering in its complexity. Each agent's reports had to align with others without appearing suspiciously identical or overly coordinated. They needed to reflect their supposed access levels and personal limitations realistically. Garbo's extensive network might report large-scale troop movements observed from multiple locations. Brutus could describe high-level command decisions overheard through military channels. Tricycle might relay social gossip about officer assignments and unit transfers. Each perspective had to remain consistent with the agent's cover story and apparent intelligence-gathering capabilities. Timing became critically important as D-Day approached. Agents had to report their discoveries in logical sequences that matched German expectations about how intelligence naturally emerged and flowed through spy networks. Information had to appear at realistic intervals that reflected actual travel time and communication delays. As June 1944 approached with inexorable momentum, the deception operation reached its dramatic crescendo. Every element had to work in perfect harmony to maintain German belief in the Pas de Calais invasion scenario until Allied forces were firmly established in Normandy and could resist German counterattacks. The stakes couldn't possibly be higher. If German panzer reserves moved quickly to Normandy within the first critical 48 hours, concentrated Allied forces on the beaches might face complete annihilation. The invasion's success depended entirely on maintaining German strategic confusion during those crucial early hours. May 29, 1944, marked the beginning of Garbo's final, most crucial performance. His Agent 4 in Southampton reported massive troop concentrations unlike anything previously observed. Agent 7 in Swansea described continuous supply convoys heading southward toward embarkation ports. The messages transmitted to German intelligence headquarters in Madrid created an unmistakable picture of imminent large-scale military action. But the reports carefully avoided specific details that might prompt immediate German defensive responses or troop movements. The intelligence suggested major operations were imminent, without revealing exact timing or locations that German commanders could act upon immediately. Ghost army units, now positioned throughout England, executed their most critical and demanding performances. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops created fictional marshalling areas across East Anglia with unprecedented attention to realistic detail. Inflatable equipment appeared overnight in carefully selected fields, positioned under camouflage netting that didn't quite conceal them completely. Radio operators maintained round-the-clock transmissions, simulating the characteristic communication surges that preceded major invasion operations. Sound trucks played carefully timed recordings of tank engines warming up during pre-dawn hours when German acoustic surveillance was most likely to detect them. Physical preparations intensified the overall illusion through coordinated air and naval operations. Allied aircraft systematically dropped aluminum foil strips, called window or chaff, in precise patterns that simulated massive bomber formations heading directly toward Pas de Calais targets. Motor torpedo boats towed sophisticated radar reflectors that created the electronic signatures of entire invasion fleets approaching German coastal defenses. These operations, designated Taxable and Glimmer, executed during the night of June 5 to 6, created two completely fictional naval forces that appeared on German radar screens as genuine invasion armadas approaching Cap d'Antifer and Pas de Calais. German reconnaissance capabilities, severely limited by overwhelming Allied air superiority, managed only occasional fleeting glimpses of these elaborate preparations. Luftwaffe pilots, forced to fly at 33,000 feet to avoid concentrated anti-aircraft fire, photographed what appeared to be massive troop concentrations throughout southeastern England. Photo interpretation specialists at Luftwaffe headquarters counted hundreds of tanks, thousands of military vehicles, and extensive landing craft assemblies. Nearly everything they catalogued and reported was completely artificial. At precisely 01:35 hours on June 6, 1944, as Allied paratroopers descended through darkness onto Norman soil, German intelligence still firmly believed the main invasion force remained concentrated in southeastern England, preparing for the real assault on Pas de Calais. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, Commander-in-Chief West, received the first fragmentary reports of Allied landings in Normandy with profound skepticism. This had to be exactly the diversionary operation that Führerhauptquartier intelligence assessments had predicted for months. The real invasion, the main effort, would surely come at Pas de Calais within hours or days. German defensive doctrine demanded maintaining reserves for the primary threat rather than committing them to secondary operations. German military response reflected this absolute conviction in Fusag's continued threat. The 12th SS Panzer Division, Hitlerjugend, and Panzer-Lehr Division, representing over 500 tanks and 40,000 veteran troops, initially received movement orders toward Normandy. Then those same orders were countermanded based on continuing fears about imminent Pas de Calais operations. Hitler, who maintained personal control over all Panzer Reserve deployments, refused to release them for Normandy operations. He remained convinced that the Norman landings represented an elaborate feint designed to draw German reserves away from the real invasion target. At 0300 hours on June 6th, as dawn approached the Normandy beaches, Garbeau began transmitting his most crucial and masterfully timed message of the entire war. Having ostensibly discovered the Normandy landings through his extensive agent network, he reported them promptly to Madrid. This was completely accurate information, but deliberately timed to arrive after the landings were already underway. Too late for any German defensive response, but perfectly timed to establish ultimate credibility for what would follow. Then came Garbeau's absolute masterpiece of strategic deception. He reported that Agent 3 had identified Fusag forces completing their final embarkation preparations. That Normandy was indeed exactly the diversion German intelligence had anticipated. That the real invasion, the main Allied effort, would target Pas de Calais immediately once German reserves committed themselves to the Normandy fighting. German intelligence accepted Garbeau's deceptive message as absolute truth. They saw what they wanted to see. The information perfectly matched their preconceived notions. Their war diary entry revealed everything. The enemy seeks to pull our reserves toward Normandy. This will make their real attack easier elsewhere. General Hans von Salmuth commanded the mighty 15th Army. 200,000 combat soldiers waited under his command. 18 full divisions sat ready for battle. Every man remained locked in position around Pas de Calais. They watched empty horizons. They prepared for ghosts. The deception worked with stunning effectiveness. 3 full days passed after D-Day began. June 9th came and went. German intelligence still believed Normandy was fake. They thought the real invasion would come later. Ultra-intercepts captured Hitler's own words. June 11th brought his personal assessment. The main invasion approaches soon. He remained completely convinced. The Führer himself had swallowed the lie. 7 weeks crawled by after D-Day's success. Late July finally arrived. Only then did German command accept reality. Normandy was everything. There would be no second invasion. Allied forces had already escaped the beachhead. The trap had closed around German hopes. The Ghost Army packed their equipment. Rubber tanks deflated for the last time in England. Sound trucks loaded onto transport ships. Radio operators gathered their equipment. The Channel crossing began immediately. Their mission transformed, but never ended. Strategic deception became tactical battlefield trickery. The methods stayed identical. Make enemies see nothing where something existed. Make them see everything where nothing waited. Operation Elephant launched July 1, 1944. 4 days of pure theater followed. The location sat near Normandy's expanding front. Ghost Army specialists simulated an entire armored division. The 2nd Armored Division appeared to hold position. 600 men created this massive illusion. They suggested 15,000 troops waited nearby. Hundreds of vehicles seemed ready for battle. German observers recorded everything they saw. The real 2nd Armored Division moved secretly. They prepared for Operation Cobra. This would break German lines completely. Success depended on surprise. Ghost Army deception provided that surprise. German artillery responded predictably. Thousands of shells rained down. Every round hit inflatable equipment. Empty foxholes absorbed the bombardment. real soldiers remained safely elsewhere. Battlefield deception grew more sophisticated daily. Experience taught valuable lessons. During August 1944 came Operation Brittany. Ghost Army units simulated entire task forces. They suggested attacks from impossible directions. Radio traffic filled the airwaves deliberately. Clear language revealed false attack schedules. The accidental revelations looked authentic. German listeners believed every word they intercepted. Sound trucks positioned near rivers. Bridge construction recordings played continuously. Fake crossing points came alive with activity. Engineering sounds echoed through valleys. German defenders heard approaching disaster. These elaborate illusions worked perfectly. German forces weakened their real positions. They rushed to defend against phantom threats. Actual Allied attacks found gaps everywhere. Operation Brest demonstrated tactical evolution. August 20th through 27th, 1944, brought masterful deception. Task Force Mason existed only in German minds. Ghost Army units created this convincing presence. German intelligence reported complete formations. An entire armored division seemed ready. Only dozens of specialists actually operated. They moved like shadows through the countryside. Captured German prisoners revealed everything later. Their commanders had repositioned entire reserves. Fabricated threats drove every decision. Real battles were lost, defending against illusions. Ghost Army techniques evolved constantly. Experience revealed German observation patterns. Tanks that never moved looked suspicious. Nightly repositioning became standard procedure. Inflatable equipment rotated through positions. Heat signatures required special attention. German infrared detection spotted cold vehicles. Oil drums filled with burning materials solved this problem. Fake vehicles radiated convincing warmth. Technology met deception perfectly. Supply accumulation patterns mattered enormously. Sudden material appearance looked suspicious. Gradual buildup appeared natural. Ghost Army specialists understood German expectations. They fed those expectations carefully. German intelligence failure reached staggering proportions. The 15th Army represented Germany's strongest force. 18 divisions waited at Pas de Calais. These units included elite formations. 1st SS Panzer Division Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler sat idle. 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich remained motionless. 116th Panzer Division Windhund waited for nothing. Each division contained 15,000 soldiers. Hundreds of tanks sat unused. Artillery pieces pointed at empty seas. Support vehicles consumed fuel pointlessly. The most powerful German force fought phantoms. Half these forces moving to Normandy would have changed everything. The Allied beachhead might have collapsed. D-Day could have failed completely. Instead, these armies watched empty horizons. Resource allocation revealed twisted German priorities. Pas de Calais bristled with defenses. 2,000 artillery pieces covered the beaches. 6 million mines created deadly barriers. 100,000 beach obstacles blocked approaches. 500 concrete bunkers dominated positions. Gun emplacements commanded every angle. The strongest defenses protected nothing. Meanwhile, Normandy's defenses seemed almost weak. The German 7th Army held actual invasion beaches. 8 divisions totaled roughly 120,000 men. Armor support remained severely limited. This disparity resulted directly from Fusag's phantom threat. German beliefs shaped defensive deployment. Imaginary armies drew real defenses. The strongest positions defended against nothing. German naval forces made identical mistakes. The Kriegsmarine positioned remaining surface vessels incorrectly. U-boats waited in wrong waters. Invasion fleets would never approach these positions. The Luftwaffe concentrated fighter coverage uselessly. Already weakened air forces protected empty sectors. Reconnaissance flights searched for phantom armies. Real preparations proceeded unobserved elsewhere. Beyond statistics lay human dimensions. General Hans Speidel served as Rommel's chief of staff. Post-war testimony revealed psychological pressure. Enemies seemed everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Staff officers worked 18-hour days. Intelligence analysis consumed their lives. Allied forces that didn't exist dominated their thinking. Counter-strategies developed against invasions that would never come. Major Hans von Luck commanded a panzer battalion. 21st Panzer Division received contradictory orders constantly. D-Day alone brought 4 different movement commands. Precious fuel disappeared through confusion. Time evaporated through false intelligence. Allied intentions seemed to change hourly. Real and imaginary threats blended together. German response capabilities crumbled under confusion. German soldiers experienced psychological warfare's full weight. Private Klaus Fischer manned Atlantic Wall positions. Letters home described ghost ships on horizons. Vessels disappeared when observed closely. These visions were Allied deception operations. Radar reflectors created phantom fleets. Constant false alarms destroyed morale. Readiness eroded through endless anticipation. Impact extended to French civilians. German forces requisitioned supplies based on fabricated threats. Fortifications appeared around phantom invasion sites. Local populations suffered through German paranoia. Near Dover, German long-range artillery wasted ammunition. Precious shells bombarded dummy installations. Real Allied preparations continued unmolested. Resources disappeared, attacking nothing. First cracks appeared through prisoner interrogations. Captain Wilhelm Detmer was captured June 18, 1944. Confusion dominated his statements under questioning. Why hadn't Fusag attacked yet? His interrogators maintained perfect operational security. Neither confirmation nor denial came. Detmer revealed German intelligence believed completely. At least 25 divisions remained in southeast England. Allied advances through France revealed more. Captured German intelligence documents exposed deception depth. Maps found at 15th Army headquarters showed detailed Fusag positions. Every unit was fictional. Intelligence summaries described fictional division movements. Precision would have been admirable if units existed. German intelligence had created elaborate fantasies. They believed their own fabrications. Psychological impact devastated German officers who learned truth. Colonel Otto Hoffmann was a senior intelligence officer. Capture in August 1944 brought devastating revelations. Initially, he refused believing Fusag was fictional. Evidence became overwhelming eventually. Aerial photographs showed inflatable equipment clearly. His reported response revealed everything. Then we are not just defeated. We are fools. Full scope emerged during post-war interrogations. Mondorf-les-Bains, Luxembourg held senior German officers. American intelligence conducted systematic debriefings. Truth emerged piece by piece. General Wilhelm Keitel commanded Armed Forces High Command. July 23, 1945 brought his admission. German intelligence had failed completely. Deception detection proved impossible. His statement revealed everything. We believed what we wanted to believe. The enemy showed us exactly what we expected to see. Confirmation bias had destroyed German judgment. The Ghost Army's roster previewed post-war cultural achievement. Bill Blass painted inflatable equipment during wartime. Later, he revolutionized American fashion design. Creating illusion with fabric perhaps originated in military deception. Canvas and rubber became fashion inspiration. His ability transforming civilian clothing reflected military experience. Making reality from nothing became his specialty. Ellsworth Kelly served as a camouflage artist. Hard-edge painting and minimalism followed military service. Bold, geometric shapes reflected equipment hiding techniques. Pure colors came from camouflage experience. The camouflage work involved making visible things disappear. His art became about making nothing appear as something. Military training shaped artistic vision permanently. Art Kane photographed jazz musicians for Esquire. His famous work, A Great Day in Harlem, came later. Service in the 603rd Engineers provided foundation. Visual composition understanding originated in military installations. How eyes moved and could be misdirected came from creating illusions. Equipment that existed only as deceptions taught composition principles. Military service shaped photographic genius. Arthur Singer, Jr. painted camouflage during wartime. Later, he created celebrated Birds of North America stamps. Attention to detail was honed, making rubber equipment look real. Military precision influenced artistic excellence. These artists brought unique warfare skills. Deception wasn't about perfect replication. Success meant meeting expectations instead. Tanks didn't need perfect appearance. They needed to look correct from 30,000 feet. German photo interpreters had specific expectations. Meeting those expectations was everything. This principle influenced post-war careers. Perception mattered more than reality. This lesson would guide their civilian achievements. Military deception became artistic philosophy. Creating believable illusions became their specialty. Operation Fortitude required unprecedented coordination through summer 1944. Every element needed synchronization. Visual, sonic, and electronic deception covered thousands of square miles. Dozens of fictional units required constant maintenance. London Controlling Section maintained master plots. Every fictional division's location was tracked. Strength levels needed constant updating. Activity levels required careful monitoring. Consider the staggering complexity involved. FUSAG comprised 11 fictional or misrepresented divisions. Each division theoretically contained 15,000 men. 2,000 vehicles per unit needed representation. Hundreds of support elements required signatures. Ghost Army units maintained all these constructs. Radio traffic suggested supply requests constantly. Medical evacuations needed simulation. Disciplinary actions appeared in communications. Routine administration filled airwaves. Patterns of life convinced German intelligence. Monitoring revealed believable military activity. Weather created constant operational challenges. Rain turned inflatable equipment into collapse hazards. Water accumulated in structural folds. Added weight caused complete failures. Wind exceeding 30 miles per hour destroyed entire motor pools. Ghost Army units developed rapid response teams. Damaged equipment required replacement before dawn reconnaissance flights. Speed was essential. Drainage systems appeared in inflatable structures. Guy wire systems provided stability. Weighted bases prevented equipment from becoming airborne. Engineering solutions met every challenge. Coordination between double agents reached extraordinary precision. D-Day approached, bringing increased pressure. Each agent's reports required internal consistency. Overall deception needed constant reinforcement. MI5's B1A section managed double-cross operations. Detailed files tracked every transmitted information piece. One agent alone required extraordinary management. Pujol Garcia's network seemed enormous. His 27 fictional subagents generated hundreds of monthly reports. Each subagent had distinct handwriting characteristics. Pujol and Harris developed different linguistic styles. Information access appeared authentic. Financial dimensions added operational complexity. MI5 managed German payments carefully. Accounts showed appropriate spy network expenditures. A network existing only on paper required financial reality. Crisis management tested the entire system. One of Garbo's fictional subagents faced arrest. MI5 staged elaborate deception operations. Welsh newspaper notices appeared about Spanish national arrests. Police records were created retroactively. Garbo reported his agent's loss to German handlers. Germans believed the story completely. They commended Garbo for maintaining network security. Psychological effects created decision paralysis in German command. Every military decision required considering multiple threat vectors. Many threats existed only in imagination. Fictional forces outnumbered actual strength. Field Marshal von Rundstedt's headquarters maintained situation maps. Allied forces appeared to outnumber reality by 100%. The command structure amplified confusion exponentially. Hitler retained personal control over strategic reserves. Panzer Division redeployment required personal approval. Requests traveled through multiple command levels. Field commanders reported to Army Group headquarters. Information went to OKW Armed Forces High Command. Finally, Hitler personally received redeployment requests. At each level, staff officers evaluated threats. Intelligence about non-existent forces created delays. Confusion multiplied through command structure. General Friedrich Dollmann exemplified impossible pressure. 7th Army commanded actual invasion beaches. German intelligence insisted main threats lay elsewhere. Dollmann faced impossible strategic choices. Reinforcement requests were denied consistently. Fusag's imaginary threat influenced every decision. June 28, 1944, brought Dollmann's death. Official cause was heart attack. Many historians suspect suicide instead. Impossible situations drove commanders to desperation, defending real beaches while resources went elsewhere. Psychological pressure became unbearable. Even as Germany crumbled, deception continued. Operation Weyersen launched March 18, 1945. 6 days of ambitious tactical deception followed. Just 600 men simulated enormous forces. 30th and 79th Infantry Divisions appeared ready. 40,000 troops seemed prepared for Rhine crossing. The location near Düsseldorf drew German attention. Nearly a year of European deception experience showed. Sound trucks played bridge construction recordings. Real crossing preparations occurred miles away. Inflatable vehicles appeared in staging areas. Poor camouflage ensured German observation. Radio traffic simulated administrative chaos. 2 divisions preparing for opposed river crossing. Communications suggested massive logistical operations. German intelligence believed everything completely. Deception held despite desperate German situations. Wehrmacht units repositioned based on Ghost Army threats. German artillery critically short of ammunition. Precious shells wasted on inflatable targets. Actual Rhine crossing occurred where German forces were weakest. Redeployment against illusions created gaps. Success came with minimal casualties. Deception remained effective until war's end. Decades after war's end, full scope remained hidden. Classification walls protected operational details. Ghost Army veterans were sworn to secrecy. Family discussions were forbidden completely. Classification served multiple Cold War purposes. Deception capabilities remained problematic during tensions. Intelligence services worried about exposing operational scope. Ongoing operations might be compromised. Gradual declassification began during the 1970s. J.C. Masterman's The Double Cross System appeared in 1972. Basic operational outlines were revealed. British government opposition was overruled. F.W. Winterbotham's The Ultra Secret followed in 1974. Code-breaking dimensions were finally exposed, but full Ghost Army declassification waited until 1996. Over 50 years passed before revelation. Delays had serious historical consequences. Many Ghost Army veterans died without recognition. D-Day historical accounts written without deception knowledge. Incomplete pictures emerged from partial information. German memoirs perpetuated misconceptions about Allied strength. Officers unaware they'd been deceived wrote inaccurate histories. Capabilities assessments remained fundamentally wrong. Truth waited decades for emergence. Classification walls finally fell, revealing extraordinary documentation. Ghost Army official history was written immediately post-war. Classified for decades, it revealed operational details. Even military historians found facts fantastic. Photographs showed inflatable equipment with stunning realism. Close-up images made distinguishing real from fake difficult. German documents captured in 1945 went unanalyzed for decades. Full analysis waited for declassification. Intelligence files from Fremde Heere West showed detailed organizational charts. FUSOG units that never existed appeared completely real. National Archives ultimately released thousands of documents. Operation Bodyguard and subsidiary operations were finally revealed. Personal papers donated by veterans added human dimensions. Lieutenant Colonel Clifford Simonson's private photographs showed soldiers posing with inflatable creations. Images stamped secret had been hidden for 50 years. Diary entries from signal company operators described tremendous pressure. Maintaining radio deceptions while knowing single mistakes might expose entire operations. Personal accounts revealed human costs. Discovering they'd been completely deceived influenced post-war German military thinking profoundly. Bundeswehr establishment in 1955 brought new training doctrine. Intelligence verification and source multiplication became emphasized. Direct responses to World War II intelligence catastrophe shaped military education. German military historians given access to Allied deception documentation. Painful reassessments of the war followed inevitably. Battles previously attributed to German tactical failures were revealed as deception successes. Commanders dismissed as incompetent were rehabilitated posthumously. They had made logical decisions based on false intelligence. General Heinz Guderian revised his memoirs after learning about Allied deception. His assessment became brutally honest. We were not defeated simply by material superiority. We were defeated by fighting enemies who existed only in our minds. Real enemies struck where we were weakest. This is humiliation greater than simple military defeat. German General Staff traditional pride was shattered. Professional excellence meant nothing against complete intelligence failure. Post-war German military education emphasized skepticism about intelligence. Verification of sources became mandatory training. Recognition that enemies might manipulate perceptions became central doctrine. Deception awareness became fundamental. Beyond strategic impact, the Ghost Army legacy lived through veterans' post-war achievements. These men rarely discussed wartime service until declassification. Then, in their 70s and 80s, they began sharing stories. Stories seemed too fantastic for fiction. Reunions in the 1990s brought together aging artists. They shared history's most creative military secret. Bonds formed through deception warfare lasted lifetimes. The 2013 documentary The Ghost Army brought public recognition finally. Veterans in their 90s received standing ovations at screenings. Their contribution was acknowledged at last. Recognition came almost too late. March 21st, 2024, brought Congressional Gold Medal ceremony. Congress awarded the Ghost Army their highest honor. 3 veterans survived to attend this recognition. 100-year-old Bernard Bluestein represented 1,100 men. 99-year-old John Christman stood with him. 99-year-old Seymour Nussenbaum completed the trio. They had performed miracles with rubber and sound. Following ceremony, 1 veteran passed away. By late 2024, only 2 known survivors remained. Time was claiming the last witnesses. Their legacy would outlive them all. Memory would preserve their incredible achievement. Operation Fortitude fundamentally changed intelligence warfare forever. Controlling enemy perceptions could achieve strategic objectives. Conventional combat became unnecessary in many situations. This principle became central to Cold War strategy. Modern military doctrine continues using these influences. The operation demonstrated information superiority's importance. More tanks than Germany weren't necessary. Germany needed to believe Allied tanks existed where they didn't. Intelligence services worldwide studied the operation extensively. Lessons about deception, counterintelligence, and perception management were extracted. These principles remain relevant to modern challenges. Warfare had fundamentally changed. The operation revealed intelligence services' vulnerability to confirmation bias. German intelligence saw what they expected to see. Evidence was interpreted to support existing beliefs. Contradictory information was dismissed automatically. These psychological vulnerabilities remain relevant today. Modern intelligence challenges echo World War II lessons. Human nature hasn't changed significantly. Biases still influence professional judgment. Operation Fortitude statistics represent history's most successful force multiplication. Ghost Army's 105 men effectively neutralized enormous German forces. Adding other deception operations, fewer than 3,000 Allied personnel misdirected 400,000 to 500,000 German forces. This extraordinary ratio exceeded any conventional military operations achievements. Economic efficiency was equally staggering in comparison. Entire deception operations cost less than heavy bomber squadron. Strategic effects exceeded massive bombing campaigns. Every dollar spent on inflatable equipment returned hundreds in German resources wasted. Double-agent operations provided incredible return on investment. Defending against illusions consumed German strength. Time factors multiplied advantages exponentially. German forces remained at Pas de Calais 7 weeks after D-Day. 49 days when elite units might have contained Normandy beachhead. Each delay day allowed Allied buildup. Additional divisions landed safely. Supplies accumulated without interference. Breakout operations were prepared carefully. Time bought with deception proved invaluable. Technologies developed for military deception found unexpected civilian applications. Inflatable structures refined for military purposes influenced emergency shelter design. Temporary architecture built on military foundations. Acoustic projection techniques advanced outdoor sound systems. Modern concert sound engineering built on Bell Labs work. Ghost Army acoustic research provided civilian benefits. Entertainment industry gained from military innovation. Radio deception techniques contributed to early electronic warfare. Computer science built on deception foundations. Patterns used generating false radio traffic influenced algorithms. Random number generation traced back to military deception. Materials science advanced through developing weather-resistant inflatable equipment. Aircraft emergency slides used Ghost Army innovations. Rescue rafts incorporated military-developed materials. Civilian safety equipment gained military benefits. The Ghost Army proved artists could be warriors. Creativity could be weaponized effectively. Imagination might matter more than firepower. Veterans returning to civilian careers brought unique perspectives. Perception and reality relationships were understood completely. Their influence extended beyond individual achievements. Government support for arts education increased. National security could benefit from artistic training. Post-war American cultural influence explosion included many veterans. They had learned art could change the world. Perception shapes reality became fundamental understanding. American culture gained from military artistic training. In an era of information warfare, the lessons resonate powerfully. Deepfakes and social media manipulation echo Ghost Army techniques. Military academies worldwide study Operation Fortitude. Strategic deception became masterclass material. Modern military doctrine incorporates deception as fundamental principle. No longer auxiliary tactic, but core strategy. Ethical dimensions provoke ongoing debate. Operation Fortitude succeeded through comprehensive lying. Enemies certainly, but complex moral calculations were involved. Modern military ethicists grapple with justification questions. When does comprehensive deception become justified? Moral frameworks struggle with deception warfare. As last Ghost Army veterans pass away, their legacy demands final accounting. These men averaged 21 years old in 1944. They accomplished something military theorists considered impossible. Battles were won without fighting them. Enemies were defeated through imagination rather than destruction. Victory was bloodless but completely decisive. German forces waited for invasions that never came. Young American artists made them believe they would. Ghost Army proved creativity, imagination, and artistic vision could be as powerful as conventional weapons. German commanders defending against fabricated armies weren't fools. They were professional military officers trained at world-renowned academies. Combat experience and sophisticated intelligence services supported them, yet they were completely deceived by rubber tanks. Recorded sounds and fictional radio transmissions fooled professionals. Artistic deception defeated military professionalism. Today, digital phantoms replace inflatable tanks. Social media campaigns substitute for double agents. Cyber operations create virtual disruptions exceeding Ghost Army achievements. Technology has changed, but principles remain identical. In warfare, what enemies believe shapes outcomes more than objective reality. Young artists inflating rubber tanks in 1944 demonstrated future warfare evolution. Wars might be won not on battlefields, but in minds. Not through destruction, but through deception. Not by generals, but by artists. Germans never knew Allies used phantom armies until defeat was complete. By then, damage was irreversible. Not just military defeat, but psychological devastation of discovering they had fought illusions. Ghost Army won its strangest victory, defeating enemies by making them defeat themselves. Conquering through creativity. Winning wars with imagination alone. Legacy reverberates still in worlds where perception battles have become battles for everything. Inflatable tanks have long since deflated. Recorded sounds have faded into history. Radio transmissions have gone forever silent. But echoes of their achievement remain eternal. In information warfare, the most powerful army might be one existing only in enemy imagination. Germans learned this lesson too late, defending against invented armies, while real ones sealed their fate. The question for our age is whether we have learned it in time. In a world of information, warfare reality itself becomes the battlefield. Most dangerous enemies might be ones we create in our own minds. Ghost Army veterans understood this completely. Their legacy warns us still.